I heard it again, a low, steady beating, muffled but relentless, like a heart buried beneath the floor. You think me mad, I know you do, but listen carefully, and you will hear the truth in every word I speak. Tonight's horror story from Shadow Root Tales is The Telltale Heart. It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my mind. Once it took hold, it would not leave. Day and night it haunted me. I had no hatred for the old man. I loved him. He had never wronged me, never insulted me. I did not desire his gold. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was his eye. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, pale blue, clouded over, with a thin film that chilled my blood whenever it fell upon me. Each time I felt its gaze, a cold terror crept through my bones. And so, slowly, a plan formed in my mind. I would rid myself of the eye forever. You see, I am not mad. A madman would act without thought, but I proceeded with caution, with foresight, with perfect reason. For 7 nights, I moved with the greatest care, entering the old man's chamber at midnight. Every night, I turned the latch of his door so gently, so silently, that it took me an entire hour to place my head within the opening. Would a madman be so patient? I kept my lantern shuttered so that not a single ray escaped. Then I thrust in my head and listened. Always he slept. And because the eye was closed, I could not carry out my work. It was not the old man who troubled me, but that eye, that cursed, watchful eye. And so each night, I left him unharmed, until the 8th night. On the 8th night, I was more cautious than ever. The clock's minute hand moved faster than mine. Never before had I felt such control over my senses, such power over the situation. I could scarcely contain my triumph. Slowly, very slowly, I turned the latch and opened the door. My lantern was completely closed. Only a thin ray of light would escape when I allowed it. I slipped my head inside. Then my thumb slipped on the metal catch of the lantern. There was a faint sound. The old man stirred in his bed. He sat upright, suddenly awake, and cried into the darkness, "Who's there?" I remained perfectly still. For a long time, neither of us moved. I could hear him listening, just as I listened. The room was swallowed in darkness. At last I heard a low groan, a sound of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain. It was the sound that rises from the deepest part of the soul when fear takes hold. I knew that sound well. I had felt it myself many nights at midnight, when the world slept and dread crept into my own heart. He must have sat there for nearly an hour listening for a sound that would explain his terror, but none came. Then I opened the lantern, just a crack. A single thin beam of light shot out, straight onto the eye. It was open, wide, pale, clouded, fixed upon me. My blood ran cold. I could see nothing else of his face, only that horrible eye. And then I heard it, a faint, quick sound, a low beating, his heart. At first it was soft, barely audible, but it grew louder and louder. A quick, low, muffled sound, like a watch wrapped in cotton. I knew it well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It filled me with a strange fury. I stood motionless, the narrow beam of light fixed upon that eye, listening to the dreadful heartbeat. With each second it grew stronger, faster, louder. Surely the old man felt his terror rising. Surely his heart pounded against his ribs in horror. Still it increased. I feared the sound would be heard by a neighbor. The moment had come. With a cry, I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. There he lay, smothered beneath its weight. I listened. The heart continued to beat for a time, but gradually it stopped. He was dead. I removed the bed and examined the body. No pulse, no movement. His eye would trouble me no more. Working swiftly, I dismembered the corpse. Head, arms, legs, I concealed them all beneath the floorboards of the chamber. Not a single stain remained, not a trace. The room was as clean as before. Just as I finished, a knock sounded at the front door. 3 officers entered. A neighbor had heard a shriek in the night and alerted the police. I welcomed them with confidence. What had I to fear? The shriek, I explained, was my own, disturbed by a nightmare. The old man was away in the country. I led them through the house. I showed them everything. At last, I brought them into the old man's chamber. I placed chairs in the center of the room and invited them to rest. With calm assurance, I set my own chair directly above the spot where the body lay hidden beneath the floor. They chatted pleasantly. I answered cheerfully. My manner was easy, my voice steady. Yet as time passed, I felt a faint ringing in my ears. It grew louder, a low, dull, quick sound. My pulse quickened. I spoke more rapidly to cover it, but the sound continued, steadily increasing. Surely the officers must hear it, yet they only smiled and continued their conversation. The sound grew louder still. Was it possible they heard nothing? That they sat there calmly while that dreadful noise swelled beneath us? My head throbbed. I paced the floor. I spoke wildly. Still they smiled. The beating grew unbearable. Louder, louder, louder. They must hear it. They must suspect me. Their calm expressions mocked my agony. I could endure it no longer. I shrieked, "Stop pretending, I admit it! Tear up the floorboards! Here, here! It is the beating of his hideous heart! And even now." If you listen closely, you may still hear it. You've been listening to Shadowroot Tales. Subscribe and return when you're ready to hear the dark again.